One of the many interesting announcements at the Sony press conference this year at Gamescom was a game called Murasaki Baby from a new studio based in Italy. And I guess people want to know a little bit about where you come from, what's your background, because the game sort of, it surprised us, came out of nowhere, and it looks really, really cool.
Yeah, like I said, I come from Italy, but I also come from Canada and Japan because I got the occasion to be working with Ubisoft Montreal at the time. Back in the time, as I was making games with big explosions, right? And then I moved to Japan when I have the honor and chance to work with Suda51 at Grasshopper Manufacture. So that was the time when I was directing Shadows of the Dam, which was kind of utterly disrespectful game, kind of. And then I moved back to my home country in Italy to start my own company, and that's Ovosonico, and that's where we actually started, pitching game ideas around, and we got to find the best part with Sony. And we are an independent game development studio, but we don't believe in self-publishing too much because, it's not our job really. Our job is making games, so it was crucial for us to be able to find a reliable partner from that. And Sony, I have to say right now, is the best one that we could actually hope for.
I gotta make this joke because I'm a word pun guy, but chicken and the egg, of course, Ovosonico. But what came first? Did the concept come first, or did you sort of have a concept and then you sort of put it onto Vita, because it feels such a natural fit to the Vita? Or right. What came first there?
No, definitely the concept came first. Actually, when I think about new ideas, or just a new idea pops in my mind, and it's never related to the platform. Actually, I'm kind of a platform agnostic guy, I think, and I got the idea of Murasaki Baby from a business trip I had back in the times, and I was riding a train and I saw this little girl with a heart-shaped balloon in her hand. So it's really taken from a real life scene, right? Not from movies or other things, and I thought it would be like so cool and emotionally powerful to actually be able to grab her hand on a touch screen and lead her through an imaginary world. And that's where the idea popped in. And when I also came out with the idea of being able to switch the backgrounds, the PS Vita was the best fit for me. So it was kind of a natural marriage between the two things. And
as luck would have it, Sony were totally up for it.
I guess so.
So one of the other things about the game, I mean, it's got that sort of tactile thing where you touch it and you're sort of part of the game. That's a real nice thing. But the art style also strikes me as just beautiful and very, very different. Can you tell us a little bit about where it comes from and sort of how you came up with it?
Yeah, you mentioned the tactile feedback, and that's a pretty good point, I think, because I really want to be organic with the art style as well. And I do like contrast very much, and that's probably why you have a sort of black and white foreground and the highly saturated colored backgrounds. But it also serves a little bit of gameplay mechanic, which is actually switching the background, which in the game is like called, changing the mood and the scene. And so that we really need to separate visually the foreground layer from the backgrounds one. And it's also a way to change the color of the game if you get bored about the single color all the time. But it's mostly because all the backgrounds have different functionalities in terms of gameplay. And about the tactile feedback, yeah, I mean, I very much like, kind of disturbing imagery and grotesque and surreal art style. Actually, yeah, I think one of the biggest inspiration was definitely Tim Burton in the sense of like his early paintings in the late 80s, like for example, like Vincent, and also German Expressionism from the 30s. It's a grotesque and surreal combination of imaginary, and that fits perfectly the nightmarish world of children, in my opinion. I was kind of a secluded, kind of like lonely kid when I was young, and I used to have like this imaginary trip into my inner worlds, and that's something that it's a memory that I really cherish. And I think it's really up there in Murasaki Baby in that sense. So yeah, you might see things that have no real meaning, or utterly surreal stuff happening there. I think that game speaks about myself pretty much in a almost complete way. So it's a very personal work, I think, but that's probably why it's a game that you're gonna love or hate it. You cannot be indifferent, I think, to that kind of experience.
So, I mean, you mentioned your inspiration, but how do you go about the narrative? Because I feel it's one of those games that don't really impose a narrative on you. It's more like you see the narrative and you experience the narrative more than perhaps you hear a story or you're told a story. What's the narrative approach here?
Yeah, I think you're right. Nail it. It's like that. I mean, I like silent storytelling, right? Lately, there's a sort of trend in games to impose storylines and narratives over players and saying, you have to be sad now, laugh now, you have to be scared now. It just doesn't work for me. I think that's not the correct way to use our medium, right? We're not movies. You cannot really have a script for games. You have to use your own dictionary, and in that sense, I think our own dictionary is gameplay mechanics, the gameplay, the interaction, right? So I really want to make this experiment and come out with gameplay mechanics that can also trigger emotion, actual real emotion into human beings and not just gamers, right? And that's how we use gameplay inside Murasaki Baby, and that's how it merges with the silent storytelling concept. Meaning, yes, there is a story, yes, there is a meaning, there are other characters as well in the game, but no, I'm not going to tell you anything, right? I'm not just, I'm not going to imposing anything on you. You have to play the game, experience the whole thing by yourself, and the story unfolds right before your eyes because of gameplay, because of, oh yeah, now I understand why this guy's doing this, or now I feel it, right? And that's how you tell a story, I think. You should tell stories like that in games, not through cutscenes or.
But it's also like leaving sort of half the storytelling to the player, because they get to fill in all those,
yes,
all the quiet parts, all the things. They get to fill in with their own experiences and sort of.
That's it.
They get their own. They get their own story in a way by doing that.
Yes,
and not
they get their own interpretation of the story, and that's exactly the point. I mean, triggering, their own imagination. I want, it's like back in the times we were playing Pitfall, right? It was just a bunch of pixels over there, but in your mind you were the greatest adventure of all time, and you were actually jumping like big holes with crocodiles inside, right? But there was just a bunch of pixels. You were filling the gap by yourself, right? We have no such constraints anymore in terms of graphics, but we have constraints in terms of emotional ability to talk with people, I think, in games. So you are going to fill the gaps in that regards. But ironically, I think that you are, as director, you're more in control of the game if you act like that, rather than having a script from a Hollywood writer or whatever and just imposing it to the player in a sort of like boring, linear, well, not necessarily linear, but just like passive way. So games is not television; it's a different thing. So I really believe that leaving a gap on purpose, it's actually such a powerful tool for a director to actually tell a story rather than imposing anything else. I think that's just the way to do it.
Obviously this is early days because you just announced the project. Well, where are you at in sort of a development sort of scheme of things? Where is the game right now?
Well, we're kind of in early stages. We're kind of a pre-alpha kind of stage. So yeah, it's gonna be done sometimes next year, but I cannot say anything else about it.
You still brought playable code here. That's
Yeah, that was pretty a good achievement, I think. We're kind of amazed ourselves. Yeah, because it's been like about 6 months we were working on it. Yeah.
So, but hopefully sometime not too far away in the future.
Sometime not too far away next year. I don't know. I hope so. No, it's not released yet.
Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you very much. It's a pleasure.